Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 16 breakdown for the Singapore Asia Championships that happened this past weekend. It's technically called like round 2 because they had one earlier in the year, and this isn't, as far as I know, like the end of the year, like big championship for the event, but it is a very large event. It had 469 players, and it is, as far as I know, the largest event that has happened since Set 2 came out in Asia. And I also know that it's a little bit early for us to be covering Set 2 stuff, especially since Set 1 literally just came out in North America, but I had the deck list. I wanted to go over them anyways, so I wanted to just make this video while I was at it. So before we get started, big shouts to, let me make sure you get the name right, Noah, Nian. Links to both their YouTube and Twitter are in this document, which is also linked in the description. They posted the picture deck list, which I would not be able to make this video without, so big shouts to them. And then I also just transcribed them all to OnePiece card game .dev list here, so if you guys want those deck lists, they're right here in this document. And also big shout out to Chaz, who is doing the stream for this. This is a 2-day tournament, so they unfortunately only have day 1. They don't have the top cut, but it was 469 players with 8 rounds, as far as I know, with a top 32 cut. It might have been a top 16 cut, but I'm pretty sure it was a top 32 cut. And also, if you're wondering why it's a top 2, it's because they did not play out like they did in the previous one. They did not play out first and second because the prizing was the same, so we had like 2 champions for. So that's kind of how that works. But going into the actual deck list, we do have the BT1 Zoro here getting 6 spots, and then the Kin'emon, and I'm probably saying that wrong. He is taking 5 spots. He's new from the set. And then we have 2 Star Deck Kaidos, 1 Star Deck Luffy, 1 Emporio from the set, one of the few times I've seen blue top in like a larger event, and then also a Trafalgar Law as well. So obviously, I think that based on my original and just looking at these games, that Set 2 is more of a support set. Set 1 is still really strong for what it is. There's obviously a new archetype that's very strong in Kin'emon, but I also think that's just because green's a really strong deck as well. But red's obviously, I think, still in a really good spot, and then purple and blue are just kind of hanging on. So we're going to go over the top placing list for each leader, starting off with Han Yong's first place Zoro. The first of our top 2 lists, we do have Han Yong's BT1 Zoro. And here in North America, at least to me, I think that Zoro and Luffy are pretty close to power level. If I had to choose, I think Luffy's probably a little bit better in BT1, but Zoro is a really good contender. And neither, I think, is just strictly better than the other. But right for this BT2 meta, there's definitely kind of like this one-drop army kind of archetype that Zoro really gets a lot of advantage for with the effect that the Zoro has. So Dawn times 1 your turn, all of your characters gain plus 1k power. So if you have a bunch of 1-drops, they all get that 1k boost, which is really strong for that. And then we do have a bunch of additional ways to get a lot of advantage off our guys. So obviously we do have Otama, which is probably one of the best 1-drops in the game. Very silly there. And then we have like the new Makino. So activate main, you may rest this character up to one of your red characters with the cost of 1 gains 3k power during this turn. So for 1 Dawn, you essentially get to give plus 3k to something, which is grid for Dawn economy there, and you get that extra boost. Has to be a cost of 1, but that's still really strong. And then Nami, so if you have a Nami out, which you probably will already, because guess what, you're playing this turn 1 to be able to search for other characters, you can just make it a 5k, which is immediately pressuring damage, which is strong. And then it's a 6k with the Zoro effect, so very good effects there. You also have the Gordon as well, so activate main, you return this card to the bottom of your deck, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 3k power during this turn, which you're able to not only, you can do something where you can bring this out first and kind of have it sit there, and you can use the effect after you attack with it, which is strong. And giving something minus 3k means that it could be small enough so it can be blown up with something like the Vista, which KOs something with 3k power or less, or even the Edward Newgate with 3k power or less as well. So, or even Nico Rum. All these have like a 3k or less kind of effect. So being able to get a card that you need to get rid of down to that threshold is very very strong. So the Otama does that, the Gordon does that, and all of these are very good there. So other cards, so like 1-drop Sunny Kun just makes sense because it's a 4k 1-drop when your leader is already active, so that's good. Curly Dedan, look top 5 cards, you get to reveal a 1 red character with cost of 1, which is pretty much all your good cards anyways, so it's a great add there. And then with Zoro boost, it's a 4k, so you just need 1 more Dawn for this to pressure damage. Brook is just a good straw hat with plus 2k counter. Nico Robin, we already talked about being able to KO things like blockers or something else is very strong there. Uta, being able to return a character other than Uta with cost of 3 or less from your trash to your hand is great, so you can recur some cost here, including like a Zoro if you need to get 1 more rush swing in there. And then the new add of Edward Newgate. Normally I'd say like the top end for this were probably the Shanks, but this is on play. One of your leaders get plus 2k power until the start of your next turn, which is stupid good in a lot of ways. That this isn't like only restricted to your like your original leader for this, and then you cannot add cards from your life area to your hand by effects during this turn. And also Dawn ×2 when attacking K up to one of your opponent's 3k power less. So I can only imagine this is fantastically good in like the mirror match too, because you want to be able to get your leader to 7k for the turn, which then also just means that they're going to have a hard time pressuring you down with a lot of the single rushes. It's a very, very good card if your opponent has, goes wide and has a lot of smaller attacks instead of like 1 or 2 big attacks. So I think it's a great card, and then next turn you can start attacking with it and potentially getting rid of things, which again, if you're able to use Gordon to give something minus 3k, or Otama, if they have like a 6k or 5k blocker, you can use these effects to get rid of the blocker on the swing and then be able to swing with this Edward as well. So good effects there. And then just Jet Pistol, Radical Beam, Luffy. I think these all make sense. Jet Pistol also being 6k or less means if they have like a 9k, you can use Gordon to make it a 6k and then blow it up with Jet Pistol. So all of this stuff is good. Very strong deck, and congrats to our top 2 winner there. And then going into Kaido, this is Brandon Wu's, and this is like this is almost entirely a BT1 Star Deck one without any film. As far as I know, I don't know if the Purple Shanks Star Deck was legal or not. As far as I know, it was, but if anyone knows besides, let me know, because there's no cards from that either. The newest card is Shiiki, which is a plus 2k counter, but also trigger Dawn -1. You get to play this card from your life on a trigger, so that's fine too. Sometimes you do just need to get that one more body out, and the Dawn -1 doesn't really matter if you already have like 9 or 10 Dawn, because you'll go back up to 10 at the start of the turn anyways. So flexible there. I think that makes sense for this guy. In general, like Purple has like a lot of good cards for their life, so I think this is good for a like plus 2k. You're not playing like the Uta anyways, so I think that's fine. X-Drake also is just a really good card, but other than that, it's a very dare I say basic basic list for Kaido, and I think this shows the strength of Kaido. And if there's a whole room of people, and a good percentage of them are playing Kaido, chances are one of them is just going to hit their curve every time. They're always going to see Onigashima Island and do very well with that, and it's very strong. It's very hard to get ahead of Kaido once they see their Onigashima and they're seeing their pieces back to back. So very strong there. I think this is a really solid list that you can pretty much be running right now in North American meta, and it's just strong if you're able to see your stuff. So I also do want to look at Tay Wen Kai's top 4 Kaido list as well, just because this is, I think, more of a BT2 version of the deck, and so it uses the new Impel down archetype, and only because they're searchable here. So you're able to use this card, look top 5 for an Impel down other than itself. So it's kind of like a Nami for the archetype, which is quite nice, which includes a blocker, which you can find searchable. And then also there's the Saudi, which is a plus 2k counter. So being able to find a blocker or a plus 2k counter, I think is worth it in a deck like this. And then we also do have, like, I believe, Shuru on play, KO one of your opponents up to cost 1 or less, which is just fine for the deck. And then this also on play up to 1 Jailer Beast type character. So that would be the Mino Koala, so it's just another block you get to play for free, and then the on KO doesn't really trigger, and then the rest is just the kind of standard stuff. The only other thing is Hell's Judgment. It is also in Impel down, which this looks for just any type character, so this can add this too. It doesn't look for only characters. That's just any card with that archetype with it. Counter Dawn ×1. Give it to your opponent's leader, bow our character cards minus 3k power during this turn. And trigger if your opponent has 6 or more Dawn, your opponent returns 1 Dawn to their Dawn deck. So being able to unramp them can be very strong there as well. And I think that's very good. So we'll see if how like I did want to just mention this because they were kind of different, and I think the archetype is great, and Kaido is just still like a really, really solid leader for what he is. Like him and Onigashima just play a different game than I think a lot of other purple decks. That's really kind of hard to match the power of saying you consistently see the island there. So that is the list. Congrats again to Tay Wen. And then at the other top 4 is a Luffy list, and this is a little bit kind of like the Zoro. There are some big differences for this. Specifically, Luffy's better at just getting, I'd say, moderately larger swings by being able to use its effect to manipulate your Dawn and stuff. So both of these are great. And then also, like, Curly to Dan, being able to just find your one cost. Like all these one costs you want to see anyways. So being able to spend 2 Dawn and then you get 1 Dawn back anyways means that you just get more consistency from it. 2 of them are plus 2k counters. One of them is Nami, which can find other cards in the deck. And I think that is very strong there, including most of your like aggressive cards there. And then there's also the Masked Deuce. So KO one of your opponent's characters with 2k power or less. It's also a plus 2k counter, but then plus 2k counter. And then if this is out there and you need to like use Gordon, I don't think this would be played as much. It's just used for the counter cost, and I think that's good enough for you there. And then Nico Robin Visa. So I could see like this being played like turn 2 if you got nothing better to do, and then it combined with either like a not a Vis, but like a Gordon or Otama can do a lot of damage there. Same kind of top end though. Gum Gum Red Hawk is great to give one of your characters plus 4k power during the battle, and then KO one of your opponents with 4k power less. So being able to do like a double there is nice, and it just means like if your opponent's not like preemptively putting their Dawn on cards to play around this, which is traditionally not as strong of a play, you get some good value from that too. So that is this. Congrats again to Noel Lim for their top 4 finish there. And then next up we have the Kin'emon, which is he's really interesting. So this is going to be just assumptions on this one. I won't say that I'm the expert on this deck. And if you guys see anything that I'm saying is wrong, let me know. But this is my understanding of the deck, seeing it for a little bit and seeing it play a little bit. So activate main once per turn when you have 1 or less characters in play. Reduce the play cost of the next cost 3 or higher Wano Country type card from your hand by 1 during this turn. So that's really strong, especially since you can play some of your, like if you're going turn 2, if you're going second, playing Okiku on turn 2, with 2 Dawn on your first turn is really great. So it is a Wano Country. You get to reduce it by 3 because there's no like Dawn requirements, like how much you have. So you just play this out on turn 2. It's a 5k. That's also rest one of your opponent's characters with cost of 5 or less, which means any character they've played in the first 2 turns is probably going to have that 5 cost or less, and then you're able to swing with Okiku, and then you're able to attack with the Kin'emon after that. So I think that's a really strong like early game play for this deck as well. It's only 3 cost or less, but that also means that the Aizu is a little bit cheaper. The Raizo is also a little bit cheaper if needed, and then the Yamato becomes a 3 cost, which also rests up to one of your opponent's characters with cost of 6 or less. So I will say like this, there are quite a few different like minor variants. There is like a big 8 cost Kin'emon, Odin that is in this deck that I don't believe is being played in this one, but I know a lot of other ones were playing it. But other than that, I'd say it's kind of like the standard green. Like green had such a good starter deck. Like a lot of these like staples are still really, really good. Trafalgar Law is still good. Let me see if I can find the Odin while we're at it. So the other card that's not in this guy, but a lot of other people were playing. Where is it at? Yeah, Koizuki Odin. So activate main for 3, switch this card to active mode, which is great. It's good, so you're able to play it, and then you can attack with it twice. And then also play up to 1 Wano Country on KO with cost 3 or less from your deck, then shuffle it. So that's a lot of them were playing this card. It's obviously very costly at 8, but it can be a really good end game kind of decision for you there. And so something you can play for 3 or less could be like the Izo, which means that you get to use the on play to rest something with cost 4 or less, and that's great. And there's also some ways to get blockers on other builds for it, which if you need it, you can, but I think it's a really cool kind of play for that. So anyways, that is this list, and there's a couple more if you guys want to invest in them. Make sure to check out the document linked in the description, and congrats again to Kah Lok. That's totally wrong. I'm very apologetic for that. Anyways, going into our only blue deck, it is Emporio. So Emporio is very interesting as well. It's also impelled down, but it's the kind of the blue variant of it, and it has this. If you have 0 cards in your hand at the end of your turn, you get to draw 2. So being able to do that is. You have to set it up sometimes, and so that's kind of like the whole set of this. Not a lot of kind of blue staples make it here, but probably the best turn 1 card is New Kamaland. So activate main. You may risk the Sage if your leader is Emporio, draw 1, and then trash 1 card from your hand, then trash up to 3 cards. So if you wanted to start off with like no cards in hand, go for it. You've already done it. Very, very good there. But then also you have ways like Buggy, look top 5. You can add a Impel down if you need to. We have the Inazuma, who's just blocker, and if you have 1 or less cards in your hand, it gains a plus 2k power, which is great there, especially like on offense or on defense. And this is assumedly on both players' turn. It's like a permanent, so you'll be able to get that. Mr. 3, blocker. Also, end of your turn, you can trash 1 card in your hand to set this to active. So it's very. As far as I know, you can probably get your end of turn triggers down where you go down to 1, you activate Mr. 3's effect to trash 1 from your hand, and then you can use Emporio's effect to draw 2 afterwards. Mr. 2, probably just because it's 2k, this effect is okay. It's when attacking Dawn times 1, you may trash 1 card from your hand, turn to 1 character with a cost of 2 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck. Then when this card battles end, return this to the bottom of your own deck. So it seems like, okay, he's okay for what he does. It's a 2k counter, which is probably the better part from it. I don't think you'd be playing this card very often, but I can definitely be wrong on that. Crocodile, Impel down right there too. And then Luffy. On player, when attacking, you may trash 2 cards from your hand, return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand. Trash. Then this character gains double attack during this turn. So obviously the kind of top end for this on play and when attacking, be able to return something. And then again, all these cards like try to get you to very little cards in hand so you can activate the draw 2 at the end of the turn. And then also Emporio, draw cards into you, have 3 cards in your hand, and play 1 blue Impel down with the cost of 6 or less from your hand. So being able to do this as well. So being able to attack with this, to trash 2 cards from your hand, to get rid of something and get double attack, and then you can play Emporio afterwards. And then you can play like another one. Like it seems like there's a lot of good factors for this. And then just some big costs, and then also the Brick Fist, which return up to 1 character with cost 4 or less to the other's hand, which can be either players, and it's on a main, which is great in my mind, because I don't like when we had these for counter speed, it wasn't as good. So anyways, that's this deck. I think it's very interesting. I'd like to play it myself. I'll probably be doing some testing with it relatively soon, but again, congrats to Thomas Mack for their finish there. And to finish us off, we do have Alfred Go's top 16 BT1 Trafalgar Law. And this is like I'm never, ever happy with the ratios for Trafalgar Law. Every time I play the deck, I'm always like, oh, it needs a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And I always just like, why? Like there's nothing, it's never going to be 100% like satisfactory for it, but it's always going to be somewhat good, at least for BT1. And I think BT2, it's still a little bit good as well. You're going to see that there's not a lot of BT2 cards in this one. We do have the Color de Dan, which can only find 5 cards. Sorry, it can find a lot more. It can find 13 cards. So that's kind of nice there, being able to play a 2 cost that's able to recycle cards, especially when you need to try to find 5 cards to hit the board. That is kind of important there. Nami's always good, Magra, and then kind of like the traditional like ones you'd see there. And then we also have the Vista at a 1 of to KO something 3k or less. The X-Drake as well to KO something that's rested with 4 or less. And that's really it for the new cards. So this is a really, really specific build if you can't tell by the ratios. A lot of 1-ofs, a lot of 2-ofs, very little 4-ofs in this compared to how I traditionally see it. And I think the big thing about this deck, and I haven't seen it play as much, so I'm not sure how true this is, but this is a deck that you do need to get 5 cards out to be able to get the maximum value for these kind of plays and stuff. And the more and more we have this game, as we've already seen with a lot of these decks, the more and more ways that there is to get rid of 1, 2, and 3 cost character cards, or at least stuff in red, like with 3k power or less. It's going to be harder and harder for you to be able to set up your plays and set up what you really want to do to get the maximum value off the Trafalgar Law leader ability. So I think that's something and that's like originally when I saw this leader, I didn't think it was going to be very good because I thought it was too easy to interact with stuff. But that was in BT1, and it's good because that was wrong. There's not a lot of interaction unless your opponent really sides into or like builds around it. But now in BT2, it looks like a lot of like Zoro decks are inherently getting ways to remove your cards by also building their own board, which is strong. And it's going to probably be harder for you to get like at least like the turn 3 setup to be able to get your cycling with the Trafalgar Law leader effect. But I think I like the leader still. I think it's probably bumped down to like tier 2 in this meta from what this one tournament. We'll see if that's true compared to how I think it's dominant it is in the North American meta. and I think that is still pretty good. So anyways, that is going to be the entire top 16 breakdown for us today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Be on the lookout for more BT1 and BT2 content and tournament coverage and everything else for this card game. I really do like playing it. It's been a lot of fun, and I plan on continuing just making a lot more content for it. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.